Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're doing another installment of the weekly meta breakdown where we look at the top performing decks on the MTG Arena ladder. This particular video is for the historic best of one format. If you're looking for other formats, standard, explore, best of one, best of three, check out the playlist. We try to put out one of these once a week for each format, so you can check out and see what's the best performing deck on the MTG Arena ladder and tournament play over that time. As always, we get the data from UntapGG companion tool that you see on the screen. It runs alongside your Arena client, tracks your win rates, loss rates, collection sync, whole bunch of good features. A bunch of it is free. Link is in the video description down below if you want to sign up today. And I'll paste all these deck lists into the video description so you can copy and paste them into your Arena client, import them, and start jamming some games. So we are looking September 13th to September 20th. 40,000 games of historic best of one were played from Mythic to Platinum to Mythic rank. And from there, the top performing deck of the week is Azorius Affinity, an artifact geared aggressive deck, 64% win rate, just shy of that. One thing to note about Untapped, like you can see here with the collection syncing, I don't have a bunch of these cards. I need 10 rare wild cards, so it's cool to sync and see what you can build. So this deck here is looking to play a number of artifacts to get some synergies with it. You have payoffs in the form of like Nettlecyst, which gets larger based on the number of artifacts enchantments. It's a living weapon, meaning it comes in with a token copy attached and already equipped, so this makes it really big a creature. You have Thought Monitor, which lets you draw cards, and it costs one less for each artifact you control. In this deck, it could basically be a 1-mana 2/2 flyer that draws 2 cards. Ingenious Smith is also a card advantage engine. And then you're playing some copies of the artifact lands, Darksteel Citadel and Razortide Bridge, to give you additional copies of these artifact lands, which give you the effects. You have Karn, that the minus lets you create constructs that equally scale and is another card advantage engine. Metallic Rebuke costs less through Improvise. You can tap untapped artifacts you control to reduce the cost of the cast. So this could be a 1-mana mana leak in effect. And then the new card from the historic anthology, Retrofitter Foundry, a commander card. So this works really nice with Ornithopter. So if you go turn 1 Retrofitter Foundry, cast Ornithopter. This is a Thopter already in terms of its type. So the Retrofitter Foundry can be used with its just tap ability, sacrifice Thopter, create a 4/4. So you can pay basically 1 mana and sacrifice your 0-mana artifact to make a 4/4 on turn 1. Otherwise, you have Esper Sentinel, a good taxing card, Moonsnare Prototype that can either help you ramp or can be used for its channel effect, removal in the form of Portable Hole, a Shadowspear to make your things have trample and lifelink, all kind of mixed into that. Moving up, we next have Izzet Wizards, and this is a deck that it's a Wizards tribal spellslinger style deck. And most recently, it's added Balmor, Battle Mage Captain. Relatively speaking, this is a pretty cheap deck. All the cards in it, outside of Soulscar Mage and Dreadhorde Arcanist, and then some of the lands are rares. But compared to some of the other historic decks, it's not like overtly expensive. But what you're trying to do with this deck is play a bunch of cheap spells. You get prowess triggers. Balmor's kind of got a team anthem prowess with trample. And then Symmetry Sage gives one of your creatures base power 3, so it's a super prowess in a way, that the prowess then stacks up on top. Dreadhorde Arcanist lets you flash back stuff from your graveyard. With all the additional pumps, you can flash back 2-mana spells and potentially 3-mana spells and Wizard's Lightning. You have a way to give kind of trample and haste and just big damage out of nowhere with Reckless Charge. And then Static Discharge as a way to scalable removal options, Expressive, and Mentor's Guidance as card draw advantages as well. Also, just most recently, we're seeing a switch to Shivan Reef. This is a low land count deck, 19, so you want all your lands as much as possible to come into play untapped. So this is placing the slower lands. Then we have Mono Red Burn, 61% win rate. So this is a deck that you really just don't want to run into Angels, but outside of that, you have kind of two main and maybe 3 card advantage engines for this deck. The biggest thing in the past with this deck was it just ran out of gas. You were playing a bunch of burn spells, but sometimes your burn spells have to be creature removal spells. and you are trying to outrace recurable damage from your opponent. So with this new addition, you have Chandra, Dress to Kill, which has been a card that's been around the peripheries of some of these burn decks. Gives you card advantage, extra kind of reach, is a way to turn on Spectacle as well. And its emblem is a threatening enough emblem that your opponent needs to pay attention to Chandra. Then you also have Lelia, Blade Reforge. This is another card that lets you play cards off the top of your library while getting bigger. So you're naturally attacking. It gets bigger each time something goes into exile. This plays nicely with even stuff like Electrostatic Blast, which puts cards into exile, as well as Light Up the Stage. Light Up the Stage and Electrostatic Blast, speaking of which, are both ways to then get more additional card advantage out of the deck. And then your other creatures are Soulscar Mage, Dragon Rage Channeler that help you filter your draws, scalable cards, 1-drops that eventually can build up their power through casting instants and sorceries and Delirium and all that. Some copies of Kumano, and then 8 1-mana burn spells mixed in. Then we have Azorius Control, and this is the Lotus Field version. So with control decks, like the blue-white ones, there's usually 2 variations. There's the traditional no Strict Proctor, no Lotus Field combo, and then there's the Lotus Field combo. So what you're trying to do with this, with a copy of Strict Proctor out, the Lotus Field trigger goes on the stack, but you don't pay the mana ability, so it doesn't get sacrificed. So on turn 3, you can basically have this come to play, and then you would untap on turn 4 with access to up to 6 mana. There's also on turn 2, you can play Lotus Field with the blue mana up and stifle the trigger. You can also do Discontinuity to counter the activated ability on your turn as well for 2 mana. Outside of that, you got a bunch of removal, March, Faithful Absence, Divine Purge, which is really good against all the Collected Company decks. All the small decks also just absolutely destroys this Affinity deck. And then your win conditions primarily are Wandering Emperor, Teferi, Shark Typhoon, or a couple copies of Hall of the Storm Giant scattered in there. This one is playing a White Castle as well. And then you just have support cards, Narset, Archmage's Charm, Veto is countered, Deluge to help you dig for other effects, Farewell on the top end. Moving on, we go to Mono Green Elves, and Elves is sub 60%, just a touch under. And this is a deck that is using a new card in Leaf Crown Visionary. So the biggest downside with Elves was like a board wipe, kind of wipes you out. With Leaf Crown Visionary, it gives you another engine to spend your extra mana to draw cards every time you cast an elf. Kind of lets you snowball in that regard. And really what you're trying to do is use cards like Elvish Archdruid or Growing Rites of Itlamog to generate large sums of mana based on the number of creatures, similarly to Circle the Dream Druid. And you pump all that mana into either Elvish War Master or Allosaurus Shepherd, and then you overrun your board. You can make lots of tokens with like Elvish War Master, with Dwindling Elite, so there's a few options in that respect to kind of go wide. And then lastly, we have Squirrel Twin combo, Selesnya Heliod combo, and this is an infinite combo for those who haven't seen. Heliod, Scurry Oak, and anything that gains a life when a creature enters the battlefield, Prosperous Innkeeper, Soul Warden, or Lunar Veteran, creates infinite tokens, infinite life. Basically, how fast can you click before Arena times you out? And how that works is creature enters the battlefield, triggers a life gain trigger. The Heliod trigger goes on the stack. You target Scurry Oak. When Scurry Oak gets a counter on it, you create a token, which gives you a life, which puts a token, puts a counter on Scurry Oak, rinse and repeat, and you kind of kill your opponent that way. Trelisar and Voice of the Blessed both get bigger. Trelisar helps you dig for the combo. And then you have Collected Company and Inquisitor Captain to help fetch out combo pieces as well. So that's pretty much it for the week. I haven't been playing too much Historic. Mono Red's usually my go-to, the more creature-heavy version. I've been most recently been playing Explore. Mono Black mid-range in Explore Best of One has been some pretty good fun. And that was keeping me at top 250 Mythic for a while. And then I was just doing MIQ, so I haven't really been playing too much Explore. But usually towards the beginning and end of the months, I do my runs with Mono Red and just see if we can kind of finish up in a nice spot in Mythic. In any case, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great one. Stay safe out there and catch you next time.